Welcome to the Sport and Peace Scholar Athlete Initiatives at the School for Conflict Analysis and Resolution. Today we have joining us Brendan Toohey, who's the Executive Director of Peace Players International, with offices in Northern Ireland, Israel and the West Bank, Cyprus, and South Africa. The organization brings together children from communities in conflict to play basketball. Brendan has made numerous media appearances and is the recipient of several awards, including being named as one of the 100 most influential sports educators in America, top 40 international development professionals under 40 by DevEx and Chevron, 2010 Aspen Ideas Festival Scholar, and was recognized with his brother Sean as two of the Washingtonians of the Year by Washingtonian Magazine in 2005. Also, in 2006, former President Bill Clinton applauded Peace Players International for their efforts to bridge divides and promote peace between Israeli and Palestinian youths. In addition to his role as executive director, Brendan has also served as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University's Sport Management program. So, thank you, Brendan, for joining us today. I'd like to start off with a question relating to your personal background. What drew you to sports? I'm assuming you also play basketball.
Yes. Well, like most young kids, I grew up playing sports, and basketball was the sport that my brothers and I played the most. And we lived in a really diverse neighborhood in Washington, D.C., and spent a lot of time on the playground. And on the playground, it didn't really matter what color you were or what religion you were. The question was, could you play? And we were able to make friends from people from all sorts of different backgrounds, and that continued, and had the opportunity to play in high school and college, and ended up in Dublin, Ireland after playing in college to play basketball there. And that's where kind of this whole idea really got started.
Okay. Did you, when you mentioned on the playground, it really didn't matter what color or religion you were, and it's just if you could play. Was there a particular aha moment that you might have had that maybe you said, wow, sports can be used for something a little bit different than just getting together and playing?
Well, I think it's just something that in the beginning, growing up, you don't even think about. I think as you get older and you start looking back and you say, wow, okay, maybe that's where I learned, about acceptance, or the fact that, hey, maybe it was unique that we had friends from lots of different places. I think the aha moment came back when I was actually back in D.C. after being in Ireland, and my younger brother spent a year in Belfast, and went over there to play and got involved in a program that brought Protestant and Catholic youth together to play basketball, and had a great year. Befriended a police chief that worked in Northern Ireland and also had spent time in Durban, South Africa, training police officers. And Sean and him got to be pretty close and talking about this idea, again, of using sports to bridge divides. And the guy said, hey, I got a great location for you, Durban, South Africa. Sean said, wow, I'd love to continue to travel and try this idea somewhere else. So he came home, so this was the summer of 2000. And I remember exactly him coming and saying, hey, I got this idea to start an organization to use sports to bring people together. And as soon as he said it, it was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's look and see who else is doing this. And we looked around and didn't really see other organizations that were created to do this.
So this was around 2000?
This is 2000. And we didn't know why, because it made so much sense.
Yeah.
And I think it made sense to a lot of people. It's again, this power of sport to bring people together. So we thought, wow, this is either a great opportunity or there's a reason why this isn't being done. So we approached my dad, who was a lawyer, and I was 24, maybe 25, my brother was 22, 23, and at that age, your kids come to you and say, we have this idea to start a nonprofit. A lot of parents say, hey, great idea, but hey, go get a job, get out of my house, right? But my parents were great, and so they said, yeah, we see it. So my dad helped us become a 501c3. And then we raised about $7,000 from family and friends. And 2002, that January, my brother showed up in Durban, South Africa, and started knocking on doors and had a few relationships from the police chief from Belfast. And similarly in Northern Ireland, where basketball is a neutral sport, and one of the only neutral sports, where Catholic kids in Northern Ireland grew up playing the Gaelic sports, Gaelic football and hurling. Protestant kids grew up playing rugby and cricket. Soccer, they both play, but it's they've got a long history, and Now, a lot of times play for different clubs, root for different teams, and basketball was neutral. And the same thing was true in South Africa, where white kids played rugby and cricket, black kids played soccer. Soccer seems a black sport there, but basketball didn't have that much of a history and was neutral. So we started knocking on doors, black schools, white schools. Durban has a big Indian population, so Indian schools, and started coaching the schools. And after a while, I'd bring the kids together, and they'd expect to compete on their schools' teams, and you'd mix them up. And the same thing we saw growing up, the same thing we saw in Northern Ireland. As soon as you get kids competing together on the same team, who they're passing the ball to, who their teammate, becomes much less important than I want to win. So if my teammate, maybe he looks different than me, but if he or she can score, I'm going to throw him the ball. And as you play together, you gather that kind of common respect, feeling, hey, look, we're actually a lot alike. And that foundation of trust and mutual understanding that's the kind of the building blocks to peace. It's a big, strong word. That has to happen, for anything else to happen. So, started running programs, started recruiting local coaches, and then that first summer, he was able to convince a principal from a white school to do a match with a township school. And this had never happened, ever in South Africa, where a white school would travel to at least where we were, travel to a township school. And South African Broadcasting Channel covered it. And they're on the bus with all the white kids, and the kids are very kind of nervous and not knowing what to expect. And they go to the township school, and they get off the bus, and the whole community is there. And they get off the bus, walk on, and they get a huge ovation from everybody on the court. The captains exchange flags at half court, mix the kids up, and they play. And then afterwards, South African Broadcasting Channel were interviewing the kids and coaches and parents. And the common refrain was, we were nervous, or we didn't know what to expect, or we never done this before, and I can't wait to do it again. And I think what's special about what we've been able to create in these locations is it's great to do it once and kind of making things happen that weren't happening before, but the real trick, or the real, the way that where impact comes is to do it continually. So these programs are now happening on a consistent basis. They're not just happening with us, and these kids coming together and playing and getting to know each other, something that happens on a regular basis, and that's when friendships can form.
Yeah, and I think you hit a really key point here, is that you can have a great one-time experience where these people get together, where kids get together, but the fact that you have someone locally who's on the ground, who's there, committed to this effort to make these events happen again through partnerships or what have you, I think that's the key, right? And that way we can build towards sustainability.
Absolutely. And one of the real one of the key learnings that we had early on is, originally we were sending over young American, a lot of times they play basketball in college, to run the programs. And while that role is an important one in terms of having kind of a uniqueness to the program, funny accent, a tall American, what have you. And Americans, basketball is a global sport, but it's also seen as American sports. They have some credibility, but we realized fairly early on that the key to having these programs be lasting and effective is to have local people running them.
Yes.
And the people that are most able to shape young people's lives are people that look like them, people that know the community, people have credibility there. So that was a key transition from us going from being an organization that's seen as a U.S.-based organization to seeing a truly global organization, and for it to be led locally. So now we've got year-round programs in Northern Ireland, Cyprus, South Africa, and Israel and the West Bank, and they all have local managing directors, local boards, and local funding. And I think what we're most proud of is the people in these communities on our team talk about Peace Players the way we do, and there's a real sense of ownership.
What, I know can you speak a little bit about some of the organization's activities currently?
Sure.
I'll let you.
Sure. So we've got year-round programs involving about 4,500 kids totally in 4 sites that bring boys and girls, largely aged 8 to 13, together through school, club, other community programs to play together, to learn to live together and to become leaders. Whether, and the programs are operated differently based on the environment or location.
Mm-hmm. So
in a place like Northern Ireland, where it's largely through the school system, where you bring Protestant and Catholic kids together through physical education and other kind of school training programs that lead it into a more competitive structure for older kids, where Protestant and Catholic kids play on the same team. Where in South Africa and in the Middle East, and even Cyprus, it's more club-based, where you have kids coming together, both through on the front end, just kind of single identity, leading to twinning programs, where you have kids coming from different backgrounds, that have just practices together, to more competitive programs that are playing in the top leagues on mixed teams, to leadership programs where kids are trained to be facilitators, to be peacemakers. We've got kind of really two components. One is the sport component,
mm-hmm.
so coaching kids how to play,
mm-hmm.
Again, being competitive, and the fundamentals of the game, and naturally just coming together to play together on a regular basis is building that foundation, mm-hmm. of, hey, I understand this person, I see this person's a lot like me, and opportunities to build friendships. And then the second part of it is an actual curriculum that, in partnership with the Arbinger Institute, we've developed. Really, that takes place on and off the court around seeing each other as humans rather than objects, and really, how do I take my learnings on the court with these new friendships that I'm developing and take them home with me? Mm-hmm. And how do I influence my family, my peers? So it's not a program where kids have these experiences on the court and then they're getting a totally different picture when they get home. So it's, all right, how do you take what you've learned and apply them to other environments, and how do you bring other people in? And that's really the great thing about sport, is people witness it, people come to games, people notice it. It's something that the community is involved in. It's apolitical. It's a level playing ground. A lot of times we're in areas where one side is seen as having more power, one side is seen having being deprived. You get on the court, it's based on talent, but you can't have. I think what we've learned is you can't just have the sport piece. You can't just have the peace building piece. How do you combine them? How do you really have coaches and kids believe that the peace building part of it is not only helping them to become better people, solve their own internal conflicts, develop friendships and changing attitudes about the other, but also it's making us better teams. It's making us more successful. It's training me how to be a leader. It's something special that I'm involved in, and other people want to be involved with me.
What about the parents? I mean, you have offices and you're doing activities in quite contentious such places, and places where you've had protracted conflicts. What happens to these kids when they go home and you're combining this curriculum and the sports piece? Do they get supported from their families?
I mean, it varies.
Yeah.
I would say largely we get a lot of support from parents and families.
Do you have a contact with the parents?
Oh yeah.
And
so in the beginning, early on, when we were still figuring out how to do this, we weren't always out front about what the program's all about, or kind of maybe flying beneath the radar. But we realized, no, it's not. It's not the way to work it. You got to engage people and make people part of the program, and so it's interesting. I mean, we've had contentious meetings, or there's been some pushback, but large and large, most people want the same things, and they want their kids to live in a peaceful environment. They want to kind of change the future compared to what the past has been in terms of conflict and not liking each other and being stressed. So for us, the real key is the fact that people who are running these programs are from these areas and have the relationships. So if I went and knocked on somebody's door, and whether it be the West Bank or Northern Ireland or what have you, the parents aren't going to necessarily say yes to me. But if they know the local coach, the local employee, there's a lot better chance of success, and there's already that credibility built in there. So that's really the key, is having the right people lead the programs and that have the trust and credibility in these neighborhoods and these communities.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm enjoying this conversation because I'm hearing a lot of key points in that cultural considerations are extremely important, and also the combination of having theory in terms of curriculum and structure involved, and merging that with the actual, practice, what you do in sports, and also having an inclusive program where everybody's included, and you're touching on all these stereotypes, but perhaps it's being framed maybe a little bit differently in different areas, particular to that conflict or to that culture.
Absolutely, and sometimes you put maybe even too much pressure on yourself. Like in some locations, just getting kids together, number one, could take a long time, but two is a big accomplishment. So understanding, the cultural sensitivities and sometimes barriers, and being able to celebrate success, and understanding the correct pacing is really important. Where
from activity to activity, you mean?
Well, even from year to year, say, you know what, you can't come in right away and say, we're going to, in certain communities, we're going to bring everybody together and it's going to be good. It might take a year or two of, single identity work in terms of, building the capacity and, the trust, and also you don't want one group of kids to be a lot better than the other, so some sort of, equal playing ground.
And these teams are always mixed, right?
Well, they are. I mean,
so it's not like Israelis going fighting against Palestinians.
But you might say, let's say, I might be in a, wherever location, I might be in one community for a year or two. Say, all right, we're preparing, and people. Conflict isn't just about white versus black or Catholic versus Protestant or Israeli versus Palestinian. We have our own internal conflicts, and actually a key is people share their own. I mean, my conflict as a Black South African, I might have the same conflicts with my parents or with my friends that a white South African would have, and those conversations around rather than talking about histories, say, hey, this is what I'm facing in my life. Hey, wow, I'm facing the same sort of thing.
So you're human, I'm human. We feel the same type of hurt.
And that's such a key,
right? Because
in these in these conflicts, people often objectify the other, dehumanize the other, and that makes them easier to hate, to hurt, to kill. And for us, the goal is to humanize, and not just. And then there's also staging to this. I might, come in and we might develop friendship, and I might say, well, Soolmaz is the exception, right? She's fine, she's my friend, but others, they're still. So how do I take this individual maybe relationship or change of attitude and not make it about you, just you? Say, wow, you are, so are these other people, and it really kind of opens you up and changes, and it frees you, because this issue of conflict is also based on collusion. So I might have have this version of this person as not a human or object or a bad person, but then that person does something to me, I do something worse to them, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. What we try to teach our kids is actually, no, you have the power. How do you react, or how do you control your emotions? And I'm not going to. By looking at that person as a human, I'm actually freeing myself to have my own reaction to the way I treat my person, rather than be forced to do something bad back to them because I perceive they're doing something to me.
Right, or reactive.
Yeah. So what we're trying to create is lots of kids with this attitude, and obviously developing friendships with one another, but even when there's not like a deep friendship, kind of a change in attitude, an open attitude, and you're able to work with lots of kids, and we're in fairly small places.
Yeah.
So you can have this kind of this tidal wave where you're building it up, and you've got enough people with a change of attitudes, developing friendships. It might not be overnight, but you look 10 years down the road, and you're going to be able to really not only make change, but document it and see it.
And so I mean, you're leading into my next question, is that all of this takes resources to do, not just manpower, but also financial resources and being able to document this stuff. And so, what are some efforts that Peace Players has taken to maybe speak about your grant work, some of the organizations that you're partnered with.
Sure. So we started out, friends and family, a couple $1,000s, and just survive, right? Get as much as we could for free. But I think we were able. Our first, it was wild. We were probably, and there were several times we were on the verge of, hey, we don't have any money. How are we going to survive? And I remember, one time when it was, we kind of tapped our resources, and we had applied to this grant from the Low Rate Sport for Good Foundation like 6 or 9 months prior, and we're seriously like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. We get the call saying, this is when we were just still in South Africa, and we just started in Northern Ireland, and got the call saying, hey, we're going to, it was a grant to support the training and salaries of our local coaches. Like 2 years, and so we got it. We're going to be here. We're going to survive. And what we've been able to do a pretty good job of is the mix of continuing to secure individual support, contributions, but also some institutional support from foundations, corporations, and government. So our some of our key partners and funders are Adidas, United States, the State Department, and USAID, and the Brooklyn Nets are a new partner of ours, and we've got about 40% of our funding comes from in-countries. So it's
nice.
Each of our sites are there
from local partnerships.
Correct.
Okay.
From corporations, foundations, and government.
Cool. Okay.
And that's something, again, in order to make these programs sustainable and expand and strengthen, there's got to be local support.
Yes.
So we've done a really good job, I think, of that. There's we've got a ways to go, but the long-term goal is, everything that happens in these places are going to be funded from them. And that not only is that a healthy financial model, but also shows there's some real value, and people, from these places are perceiving that what we're doing is working, and they want to be part of it.
Okay. So sport has, we've talked about some, the good things that sport can do and the good side of it, but there's really a dark side of sport too. Some would even argue that sport has an inherent element to it, and that it's always a win-lose situation. And so, what are some efforts that PPI, Peace Players, has taken to document some of the changing attitudes, or perhaps some of the grant work that you've applied for?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of times sport is as much a divider as a uniter. We were talking about conflicts between fans, or this kind of win-at-all-cost mentality.
Yes.
But again, what we're trying to do is amplify the positive aspect of sport in terms of the team building, relationship building, communities rallying around teams and kids, and working together to achieve a common goal. Looking at evaluation, we started out just, hey, how do we measure outputs? How many kids are we involved? How often do they come together? And then move on to testimonials. What are kids saying? What are parents saying? So we're able to get, again, on the early end, some at least good anecdotal evidence that we're having a positive impact. And then kind of say, all right, what's next? And so we had to say, really focus on two things. One, what are kids thinking when they come to the program, and what are they thinking after they're in the program? So we had, in each of our sites, we had outside partners kind of measuring attitude change, largely based on surveys from kids, from parents, from coaches. And again, very positive. I think what's also helpful in that type of exercise is you learn what you can do better. Another, I think, really interesting way to look at impact is, what are you making happen that wasn't happening before?
Sure.
And that's really the power of sport is, again, people witness it. Lots of people can be involved in it. It's not political, and people like doing it. So, for example, in Northern Ireland, where, again, sport is often seen as something that divides people, we've been able to work with the Irish Football Association, Ulster Rugby, and the Gaelic Athletic Association, which represent the three big sports in Northern Ireland, to really help them diversify their participant bases, and again transform this idea of sport, really supporting the sectarianism that exists in Northern Ireland, to helping to change it. So we've got this program called Game of Three Halves, where we work with the three big federations and their coaches to run programs to get kids from kind of the community that aren't involved in their sport typically to engage. And you go from an effort now that started with our program. It's a very small program in Belfast, to a program that is now working with the big three sports and can have really, in not too long of a time, can touch almost everybody on the island. So again, now it's the three federations that are leading this effort, but I think we're a pretty key component in it. So it didn't happen before, where kids from both sides are playing these sports, and hopefully it will. Another example of making things happen is in East and West Jerusalem. We've got teams, mixed teams of Palestinian and Israeli kids that are playing in the Israeli National League, and it had never happened before where kids from both sides of Jerusalem would play together. And actually, any kids from East Jerusalem would play in the Israeli National League, and started a couple years ago, and it was pretty can be pretty challenging, and not everyone liked it, and they weren't super competitive in the beginning. To fast forward to this year, one of our teams won it. Now won one of the leagues, and people are coming and witnessing the games and seeing these Palestinian Israeli kids play together. And Palestinian kids are good, so they're gaining this respect both from others and kind of this internal, wow, we can do it. And again, it's making it okay to happen.
Yes.
What's been great is this past year we got a grant from USAID to do a pilot study for something called a randomized control trial, which is a really academic and intensive evaluation around behavior change, trying to answer the so what question. So what does all this matter? What are happening to kids as a result of your program activity, not just the now, but in the future? Is it really changing their behavior, changing the way they look at one another, and how is it impacting the people that they're related to, and their families, their siblings, their communities? And just this past month, that pilot study, we got a grant from the United States Institute of Peace to fund a 2-year study led by 2 researchers from NYU. So
congratulations.
Thanks. It's huge, and obviously having USIP, which is just a very respected body, backing this, is a great thing.
Weren't you also a speaker at a sports and peace building?
I was a couple years ago that you organized, and it's been great to see, and we've been at this for 12 years now, to see kind of the institutional support and belief in the power of sport. Now, we as an industry, sport for development industry, we got to do a better job of showing results and really investing in kind of the evaluation, and obviously having other people that will invest in it, because I think intrinsically it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence that shows that this stuff works, but there's not much good data around this kind of long-term behavior change. So,
and that's been really a primary critique.
It has, and somewhat legitimately. So I mean, sometimes maybe they look. Sometimes I feel like they're asking us to show something that no one else has.
Yeah.
People sometimes are naturally skeptical because it's sport, and people see it as not necessarily a right but a luxury. Yeah. But we're confident we're going to get good results, and what that's going to do, not just for peace players, but hopefully for the field, is further legitimize this work, a way to bring on, obviously, bigger institutional funding and partners, and really a sense of this works, and to get other people involved,
and make it more of an interdisciplinary effort.
Absolutely,
so key.
Absolutely, and not seen as just in the sport realm, or even in just the peace realm, but joining those two forces. So we're hopeful. We've actually already gotten some really good initial feedback and results from the pilot study, so we're optimistic.
Well, again, congratulations.
Thank you.
This is not only a huge success for Peace Players and for your dedication to the organization and to the field, but I am also confident that it's going to help replicate future initiatives like this, where you have multiple actors involved. So I'm looking forward to learning more about it. Maybe in the next, year or so, you can give us an update during another podcast.
I look forward to it, and we're also kind of at the same time starting a new effort geared towards taking what we've learned how to do in partnership with the Laureate Sport for Good Foundation and working with organizations in other areas of conflict to help them, establish their own sport for peace building initiatives and to build a network of people doing this across the globe. So that's our next big kind of venture. And obviously, the better results we're going to get from this randomized control test is going to, further lead, and kind of legitimacy to, the work we're doing on site, but also this new training technical system.
That's great. I love it. I love partnerships. I love mixed research methods. It's great. As you know, we're quite interdisciplinary here at SCAR, and we do have multiple research going on that's mixing qualitative and quantitative methods. So I'm happy to hear about this. I guess my very last question for you is: do you have maybe a funny sports story that's come up in all your experiences?
Sure. So I remember one of the first, we were doing a big tournament in Derry in Northern Ireland, and it was one of the first big events we did there. We had lots of kind of key people from the city and the region, and all of a sudden a fight breaks out. Oh no, this is gonna be bad.
Between who?
Between two kids.
Okay.
So fight break, and we're all worried. They separate them, and this is gonna look bad. And then that coach comes up to me and says, "Don't worry about it. They're cousins." and it's it kind of brings it back, like things are gonna happen, but
it's funny that we just assumed right away
that it's something bad, but they end up being cousins, and it happens every day. So and then the kids were able to laugh about it, and so life isn't perfect. Sometimes stuff happens, but it's not just specific to being in conflict in one side against the other. And the key is can you spot it? Can you use those types of events as teachable moments? And sometimes can you laugh about it?
Yeah, which is what you guys ended up doing there. Good. Well, thank you so much for your time. I look forward. I wish you much success.
Thank you.
And I look forward to staying in touch and having you back so you can give us an update.
I look forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us. This was Brendan Toohey from Peace Players International with the Sport and Peace Scholar Athlete Initiative. Thanks, and join us next time.